So you're one of those people out there looking at both the 15-inch MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Air and trying to decide which one makes the most sense for you. There are a lot of similarities between these two laptops and a few differences, but in my mind, it really just comes down to two simple things. So I want to cover in this video what's the same, what's different, the performance, and how to decide which one to get, while also addressing that whole sustained performance thing. Yeah, you probably heard about that. So let's just start off with what's the same inside. On the right, we do have the base model 13-inch M2 MacBook Air, and over here we have the base model 15-inch M2 MacBook Air. And starting with the processor, you're going to see a lot of similarities. This processor is an 8-core CPU in the M2 processor, which has 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. The GPU on the 15-inch version is a little bit different, and we'll talk more about that in a second, but there is a 10-core GPU on the 15-inch and 8-core GPU on the 13-inch. They both come with 8 gigabytes of unified memory and a 256 gigabyte SSD solid-state storage inside. And the SSD inside of both of these, again, is 256 gigabytes, and they get somewhere between 15 and 1800 megabits per second for read and write speeds. Just like the CPU, the battery life in both of these is very similar. Although there's a larger battery physically in the 15-inch model, they both get a similar battery hours, Apple suggesting up to 18 hours of movie playback. In my experience using this 15-inch laptop over the last few days, it has a very similar battery life to the 13-inch version. Both of them will get you through a full day without issue, so regular work day, regular messing around day, whatever, you should be just fine. The screens on these two devices, although a slightly different size, are essentially the same technology. They both can get up to 500 nits of brightness, they both have P3 wide color support, and they both have True Tone built in as well. And at 224 pixels per inch, both of these displays are essentially the exact same, just one of them's cut a little bit bigger. And if you've used any Apple displays in the last few years, you're gonna get a Retina quality display, it's gonna be bright, it's gonna be vivid. They are really good displays, even on the base model MacBook Airs. This is the built-in camera and microphone inside the 13-inch MacBook Air. This is the 1080p camera up here in the notch. And so how does this sound compared to the 15? And this is the built-in camera and microphones on the 15-inch MacBook Air. And as you can see, there's probably no big changes here because it should be the same 1080p camera up inside the notch. So let me know what you think. On top here, we do have the same Magic Keyboard. Of course, the butterfly keyboard was replaced a couple of generations ago, but now you have the standard Magic Keyboard across all of the devices. You get the same function row on all of the laptops. I love the key travel and the sound and the feel of the Magic Keyboard. I love that it's just consistent. I can switch between devices without even thinking about it. I do wish that the material was a little bit more resilient to the wear or rubbing or whatever creates these shiny spots on these keys, because unfortunately that does kind of mess up the look and design of the keyboard. When it comes to ports, they are exactly the same on both laptops as well. You get 2 Thunderbolt 3/USB 4 ports and a MagSafe 3 connection on the left-hand side. And finally, on the right-hand side, you do get a single headphone jack on both of these as well. All right, so as you can see, a lot of similarities between them. Next, I'm going to cover the differences. But first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor, Oclean. The Oclean X Series toothbrushes combine a touchscreen and a patented maglev motor to provide a visible and efficient brushing. The touchscreen allows you to set your brushing preferences like your brushing mode, intensity, and duration. And when brushing, the X Series tracks your progress and presents a cleanliness rating. You can get a better brushing with Oclean with 2 times the cleaning power and 5 times the comfort thanks to the built-in maglev motor. This is a next-generation sonic motor which runs at 42,000 RPM, or nearly twice as fast as other toothbrushes. And even though the X Series is nearly twice as fast, it's also quieter at less than 45 dBA. And you can save 35% today on one of these X Series brushes by using the link and the code in the description below. And my thanks to Oclean for sponsoring this video. So now we'll cover a few of the differences between these two devices, starting with the displays. On the left, we have the 15-inch MacBook Air, which has a 15.3-inch display, and the 13-inch has a 13.6-inch display diagonally. Now, as you can see, the 15-inch can fit a bit more on the display at one time compared to the 13-inch. I have the same page open, the same windows. And over here, for example, on the version.com, we see 4 articles listed right here. And over here, we can only see 3. So you can see that there's a little bit more vertical room and then also horizontally as well. So we can see more of the pictures over here and more of this text in the note on the side. So with the 13-inch, you're going to have to click on the windows a bit more than you would on the 15-inch version just to be able to see the information. For example, if you're doing some research over here and writing some notes or a Word document or whatever over on the side. And here's another example of 2 web pages side by side. Again, you get a little bit more vertical room and a little bit more horizontal room, but it's not really life-changing. Now in single app usage, I think you're going to see a bigger difference. And as you can see on the 15-inch, you just get a less cluttered workspace in Final Cut Pro on the 15 compared to the 13. There's just more room to be able to bring your tools out a little bit further. You get a larger preview window. It's just a little bit easier to work around in something like this in a professional app with a larger display than it is with a smaller display. It's not to say that the 13-inch is unusable. It just feels a little bit more roomy over here. So having a bigger display for work can be nice, but you know what? Sound is also nice too. The 15-inch MacBook Air has 2 sets of force-canceling woofers and 2 tweeters compared to the 4 speakers over on the 13-inch version. In my opinion, the sound coming out of the 15-inch MacBook Air is louder, for sure, but it also sounds better. I feel like it has a bit more dynamic range, still slightly muffled because the speakers are actually hidden back here somewhere or under the keyboard or whatever, so there's no speaker grills to have the sound come directly at you. So if you try and compare it to something like the MacBook Pro, it's going to sound a little bit worse than that, but overall it sounds quite a bit better than the 13-inch version. So take a look at these samples and let me know what you think. So I was able to actually watch Top Gun Maverick on these 2 devices over the last couple days. And yes, the sound was better on the 15-inch version, but the sound on the 13-inch version was not bad either. You could definitely watch a movie, listen to music, listen to a podcast, edit video or audio or whatever on here just fine. It's really just when you listen to them side by side that they sound different. If you're using the 13-inch to watch a movie, to edit audio or whatever, you're going to be just fine. You're probably going to be happy with the sound. But if you switch over to the 15-inch, it's just going to be better. The trackpad on the 15-inch version is larger than what's on the 14. It's definitely closer, if not the same, as what's on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. The 14-inch trackpad, in my opinion, feels better because it's not too oversized. When I'm using the laptop to type at a desk and reaching over the trackpad, I feel that this is more comfortable than it is with the 15-inch version. Now physically, of course, because the larger display, the footprint of the 15-inch laptop is going to be larger. It's also going to be more than a half a pound heavier. So the 15-inch version is 3.3 pounds and the 13-inch version is 2.7 pounds. Now, depending on what your use case is, that could make a big difference or not. Also inside, again, you do have that 2 extra GPU cores on the 15-inch version, and the 15-inch version starts at $1299 and the 13-inch version starts at $1099. The only other difference is when ordering the 15-inch model, you get the option of going with the dual 35-watt power adapter or the 70-watt power adapter for no additional charge. Now, one of the things that you may have read or watched on YouTube is the idea of getting more sustained performance out of the larger MacBook Air. The thought is that the larger chassis keeps the processor cooler because there's more room inside or more aluminum to dissipate the heat while doing heavy workloads over a longer period of time. And while that idea does make sense and can be technically true, it doesn't matter. So let's see how these 2 laptops compare with the larger, more GPU 15-inch versus the 13-inch. Starting with my Final Cut Pro export test, I had the same video exported using the exact same settings, and the 13-inch version completed in 4 minutes and 3 seconds, and the 15-inch actually completed 9 seconds later. Okay, so maybe 4 minutes wasn't a sustained test, but transcoding video is an intensive job for these computers. And some of the work was offloaded to the built-in transcoders on these machines, so the 2 extra GPU cores did nothing for the 15-inch model. Next up, I did a 10-minute multi-core test with Cinebench, and the results came out to 7,982 on the 15-inch and 7,872 on the 13-inch. For a difference of about 100 points. Now, Cinebench stresses all of the cores of the CPU, and because they both are an 8-core CPU, the results were going to be similar. The larger 15-inch chassis didn't really help in this case either, because a score of 100 is really just within a margin of error. Next, I wanted to test the graphics performance of the 10-core GPU on the 15 versus the 8-core GPU on the 13, and I used GFX Bench 4K Aztec Ruins. Using the on-screen version, I got 3 frames per second higher on the 13-inch than I did on the 15-inch. That's weird, but on the off-screen test, I got 8 frames per second higher on the 15 than I did on the 13-inch. That's kind of interesting. That means that in the background performing that test, it was able to get a higher frames per second on the 15-inch compared to when it's showing on the display. So is that possibly just because of the higher resolution of the display? I don't know. Testing out Shadow of the Tomb Raider showed something interesting as well. We got 44 frames per second on the 10-core 15-inch, and we got 43 frames per second on the 8-core 13-inch. So overall in these tests, 2 extra GPU cores and a bigger chassis on the 15 really made marginal difference, if any. Now you could go a step further and run Cinebench back to back to back like some have shown, where as they get hotter, the 15-inch does slightly better than the 13-inch. But seriously, what type of workload are you running on a MacBook Air that requires that much sustained performance? If you're someone who actually thinks they need sustained high performance, then why are you even looking at the MacBook Air? And I don't mean sustained performance like editing a video once or twice a week or editing your vacation photos. The MacBook Air will be more than capable to do those tasks. But if you're trying to do 3D rendering with Blender or music production with a ton of tracks or giant code compiling, the performance of the Air, no matter which size, will probably suffer. So with all of these similarities and differences laid out between the 15-inch and 13-inch MacBook Air, which one of these should you get? It's simple. Do you want a larger display? And can you afford the extra $200? That's it. That's all that matters. Both of these are excellent laptops, and they're easy to compare apples to apples because they're almost the exact same inside. The 15-inch comes with a larger display, which may help show a little bit more on the display at one time. I don't think that the difference is life-changing, but it could be nice for those times where you need it. If the 15-inch MacBook is not connected to an external display, it will be nicer to have just that much more room to work. And when you're away from your desk, like sitting on a couch, I found that the larger display is more enjoyable to use, even if just the whole thing's a little bit more bulky. But along with the bigger size for that extra $200, you also get those extra GPU cores for whatever that's worth to you, a better charger, and better speakers. The 13-inch MacBook Air is just more portable. It's more than half a pound lighter, and it fits easier in more bags due to its size, which makes carrying it around less cumbersome. I recently traveled to Paris and London, and the 13-inch fits way easier on an airplane tray table. So overall, the 13-inch is just a better travel computer in my opinion. If this were my primary computer, which I used at a desk with an external display and speakers and whatnot, and I took it with me maybe around the house or to the office, I would prefer the 13-inch MacBook Air. For my primary use at a desk, the 13-inch is just more comfortable to type on as well because you don't have that extra large trackpad. If the primary use of this MacBook was on a desk without an external display, and I had little reason to take it places, or if I used the computer a lot by itself for media consumption, I think I would go with the 15-inch. It's just a bigger, nicer display for watching videos and better sound overall. So that's all I have to say about these two MacBook Airs. If you have any questions about these two laptops or have video suggestions about the new 15-inch MacBook Air, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see how to do a full setup and migration to the new 15-inch MacBook Air, check out this video right over here. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.